Hello there, friends. Welcome back. Got a different video for you today. We're not sitting at our usual spot at the dining room table this time. We are in the living room because the living room is where the turntable lives. And I thought we'd come in here and do a very short, non-technical show and tell about this turntable. Talk a little bit about why I have it and my time using a turntable like this back in my college radio days, and then maybe show how we used to cue a song on a turntable like this to get ready to play it on the radio. We'll keep it kind of short today and kind of non-technical. A turntable like this doesn't make a lot of noise or many sounds on its own, so we'll try to focus on the visuals and the rotation of the platter and my hand movements, and see if we can entertain and relax ourselves that way. How does that sound? You know, a thing that I think of when I think about the way physical media for music is, ever so quickly fading out of use, is that we're not just losing the physical media, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but when you have music or sound on a piece of physical media, then you also need a player to play that media. So when physical media goes away, the concept of a contraption, a mechanical device to play that media so that we can hear what's on it, that whole concept goes away as well. And, for a guy like me that grew up listening to vinyl, that's another side of the nostalgia that goes along with that, is that not only did we have our vinyl records, but we had record players to play them on. So playing vinyl was a very hands-on, a very tactile, a very engaging kind of a ritual, an experience that, I always thought added to the music listening experience. I had a couple of cheap record players when I was growing up, the standard kind of squarish, kind of a cube, all-in-one type of a stereo with a record player in the top, with a lid that opened, and then it would have a AM/FM tuner, and then a couple of cassette bays. And I took a cheap stereo like that with me to college as well. But in college, I got attached to the radio station. It was a low-powered FM radio station, and it was there that I got to use this turntable. This is the Technics SL1200 Mark II professional series. And the radio station at the college I attended had a pair of these. And coming from the cheap consumer grade record players that I owned before, coming from that and going to this was a real treat because, well, it's like going from a cheap little car to like something that's top of the line, right? It was just so satisfying. You know, I felt spoiled being able to work with turntables like this once a week on Tuesday nights for my radio show. And I got so accustomed to them during my 3 years on the air that after I graduated and did not have access to the radio station's turntables anymore, I bought one for myself, which is what we have here. So as you can see, it has a kind of a stiff plastic hinged cover on the top with a cool little domed area back here to make sure that the tone arm never hits the lid. And it opens like so. Now the lid has springs in the hinges back here that will keep the lid at this angle right here, which is fine for putting it up so that we can put in a record or take one out. But to make things a little bit easier for the video and manipulating things above the platter here, I'm going to take the lid off, and it pops out very easily, like so. So I'll try to put it down without making a crazy racket. So here's the turntable with the lid off. And many times at the radio station we would run the turntables with the lids off like this because, you know, we were taking records on and off of the turntables all the time, and the lids would have just gotten in the way. It was such a joy to stand in front of a pair of these back in the day, going from one to the other, picking records out of the shelves and queuing up songs and sending them out to a relatively anonymous low-power FM audience. You never knew how many people were listening to you at any one time with a low-power station like that. But there was something about the mystery of that I always enjoyed. Well, the parts here are pretty simple, and the concept, how how a turntable or a record player works is pretty old and well understood. Thomas Edison invented the first, what we call phonograph, I think back in 1877. His was the first device that could record sound as a wiggly little groove and then play back or reproduce that sound in the same device. And this nice looking Technics works exactly the same way. Sound is captured with a wiggly groove in a disc of vinyl, and it spins at a constant speed while a stylus, which is right down here, tracks through the left and right and the up and down of the groove and reproduces sound. It's the exact same concept. So the biggest visual feature, of course, is the platter itself. You see a rubber mat right here. It comes off. There's the actual platter. This is what they call a direct drive turntable rather than a belt drive turntable, and that means that this platter is actually, you can consider it part of the motor. It's actually it's the motor armature is the platter itself, and that gives it a very fast and smooth startup time, which helps with the cueing that we'll talk about in a little bit. But we got the platter here and the spindle in the middle. Back here in the corner, kind of hiding, is the adapter for 45 RPM records. You remember those? It's the little 7-inch singles that rotate at 45 RPMs. And they have a much bigger hole in the middle, so this is a little aluminum adapter. So here in the front left corner, we have a power switch, which is this little rotator or rotating switch. It goes like this. And you can see a red light here that's used for it's a bit of a strobe light, and it flashes on these little dots while the platter is moving, and you can it's a visual check to see that the speed is locked in, but we won't talk about that too much. You've got the speed switches down here. You got a 33 and 45. And then, of course, the switch that matters the most, the start-stop switch right here. I absolutely loved the sound and feel of this switch. Still do. way before I knew anything about ASMR and triggers and what have you. I think this, not that the Switch actually gives me or triggers ASMR, but it is an early memory that I have of a combination of a sound and a tactile sensation that was just always so satisfying to me. Just love that Switch. It's fantastic. Here in front we have a little button, and when you press it, this little stem comes up, and there's a little light in the stem. So let's take a look at that. Now this light is on this side, and it shines across the surface of the record. And the idea here is that the light bouncing off the grooves makes it a little bit easier to see the separations in the songs, so that if you want to play the second or the third or the fourth track, seeing the little separation will make it easier to know where to drop the needle. It would also help in dimly lit rooms, but the booth in my radio station never really had that issue, so I've actually never used this light too much. And then of course we have the business end of the turntable over here, the tone arm and the head shell and the cartridge. So this S-shaped tube of aluminum here is the tone arm, and it's connected to all sorts of fancy apparatus back here, and essentially all the stuff back here makes sure that the needle is oriented at the right angle compared to the plane of the record. There's a counterweight, kind of a calibrated counterweight back here that you use to adjust how many ounces of force is pushing down here at the tip, at the stylus. And of course, here is the lever that raises and lowers the tone arm. And you might be able to notice that when we push down the lever, the motion, the downward motion of the tone arm is damped. It goes down very slowly, which is just another, sign of the precision and the niceness of this turntable. We don't want the stylus crashing very hard into the surface of the vinyl. Let's see, I have, for show and tell purposes, I have another head shell and cartridge combination that we can look at. More up close. So this item here is called the head shell. This is the original Technics head shell that came with the turntable years ago. And all the head shell is a a way to mount the cartridge. So this business here is the cartridge. And then the most important part of the cartridge, I suppose, if we take off this little guard, is the stylus. Can you see it? You can see the cantilever, the little tube coming out. This bit right here. And then at the very, very end of that, a small diamond stylus. That stylus tracks through the groove. There's a little magnet assembly in it that converts the motion of the stylus to electrical signals that come through these wires. Ends up at these little contacts and then sends the signal back down wires through the tone arm and out to your stereo system. The DJ booth at my radio station was, I guess you could say, organized in kind of a U-shaped pattern. And if I was standing in the middle of the U, to my left would be a pair of these turntables. And then in front of me would be the mixing board and the microphone. And then to my right side would be some cassette decks and CD players and some other equipment. And when I would come to do my 2-hour radio show, I would more often than not roll the rolling chair out of the room into the hallway so that I could stand in the center of this U-shaped collection of equipment, and I felt like I was surrounded. It was a bit like feeling like the bridge of the Enterprise, right? Because in front of me on the wall was a huge window that looked into the lobby of the station, and so that kind of had the vibe of the view screen, the main view screen on the bridge of the Enterprise, right? And you just felt like you were surrounded by this cockpit of wonderful audio gear. And it was just, after 3 years, it just was so reassuring to turn to my left and have the pair of 1200s right there ready to do my bidding. It was just a great feeling. It made complete sense to me in hindsight that I would have ended up with one of these for myself by the time it was all done, because I couldn't bear to go back to using the cheap little record player I brought with me to college. I cued a lot of songs on turntables like this. And cueing is something that you only really need to do in a radio station. When I left the radio station, I never really did it again. You don't need to cue songs when you're just listening to your own records from start to finish. There are a couple of aspects of this turntable that make it really well suited for cueing in a radio station environment, and I thought maybe I would show you how I would cue up a song for the radio. I'm surrounded by vinyl right now. The turntable is on a little stand here, and there's probably 50 albums underneath it in the wooden stand. I thought this one would be good. This is Asia by Steely Dan. It's hard to believe this album came out 40 years ago this year. And also one half of the creative core of this band, a man by the name of Walter Becker, passed away earlier this month. So I thought it made sense to maybe demonstrate cueing with a Steely Dan album. Inner sleeve with lyrics and credits. I think everybody, when they grew up handling vinyl, everybody kind of came up with their own style of actually handling the vinyl itself. And I know when I slip the vinyl out of the inner sleeve, it always ends up in my hand like this, with a thumb on the outside and then fingers on the inside like that. I don't know if you can see it very well. So that I'm never touching the grooves. I'm never grabbing the album like this. I never even like to pull it out of the sleeve by pinching like this. I never like doing that either. I let it fall out, gently slide out of the sleeve with my thumb stopping it here, and then fingers on the label on the inside, and then that's how I'm holding it. That's how I always did it. It just became natural to do it that way, and I've done it that way ever since. So, we've got Asia by Steely Dan on the turntable. We've got our little disc washer brush. I'm going to forego the liquid portion of this right now, and we'll just do a quick little brush to ooh, sorry about that. And we got a little bit of dust from it. So I've got the stereo on right now, so that hopefully you will hear the song that, or the first little bits of the song that I'm going to cue. And I'm going to explain to you what I'm going to do before I do it, so that you'll know it when you hear it, because I'm only going to do this once. And the reason I'm only going to do it once is that this cartridge and stylus that I have on the turntable are not really meant for cueing, meaning one of the things that you have to do when you're queuing up a song is that for a part of the operation you have to run the vinyl backwards against the normal direction of play. And DJ cartridges and styli can handle that because they're built to handle that. They have very thick cantilevers, and they can handle all that back cueing without breaking. This kind of a cartridge is not really built for that, so I'll just do this once, and I'll do it a little bit slowly so you can understand what I'm doing. But essentially what we want to do is get the needle at the very, very beginning of the song, and then rotate the platter back to give it a little bit of lead time. And this is where the high torque motor of the 1200 really comes in handy, because this turntable will come up to speed after you hit the button. It will come up to speed in 7/10 of a second, which is also about a quarter turn of the platter. And that really comes in handy because, as it turns out, or at least this was always the convention back in the radio station, a quarter turn of this platter is about the angular distance between this power switch and this little light stem, meaning this much rotation from here to here is about a quarter turn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the turntable. I'm going to drop the needle on the outside edge here, and we're going to listen for the song to start. But as soon as it starts, I'm going to turn the platter back off, and then I'm going to use my hand to get the needle to the very beginning of the song. And once it's there, we're going to rotate the platter back another quarter turn, and then the song will be cued and ready to play. So let's try that. So again, as soon as the song starts, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it faintly through the speakers, I'm going to stop the turntable, okay? Here we go. Okay. So right there is the starting of the song. All right? And then we'll use these two landmarks. We'll go another quarter turn. And the song is cued. So now, when I hit the button, 7/10 of a second later, in the time it takes the vinyl to rotate from here and get up to speed and get to here, the song will start. And that would sound like this. And that's how we did it back in the day. This turntable was marketed initially to the high-end consumer crowd, but its ruggedness and features also made it really well suited to not only radio work, but also DJ, dance club type work, as well as scratching, turntablist kind of work. The pitch adjustment over here that we didn't talk about that much comes in really handy for beat mixing where you're a DJ in a club and you're chaining 3 or 4 or 5 dance songs together at slightly different tempos, being able to adjust the pitch of one turntable to match the other one that's playing, and then gradually increase or decrease tempo as the song is playing, really made the turntable well suited for that industry as well. But to me, it's just, there's so much personal nostalgia wrapped up with the 1200. It kind of represents the top of my personal, journey as a music fan. And I've got plenty of CDs and I've got plenty of music on streaming devices and things like that, where just pressing a graphical icon on a screen starts my music for me. But it's a feeling that's completely a product of the time I was born in, the time I grew up in, and how I listened to music in my formative years. And after all of those years of just playing my favorite albums through my junky little record players and not complaining, not knowing anything different, to finally land on something like this. It just felt like a luxury, like I was really spoiling myself. And now, all these years later, to still have this device sitting here in the living room for my kids to see, for my kids to understand how music used to be played. I'm willing to wager that none of their classmates ever see a turntable in their homes. That's a generalization, of course, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there's probably not too many. But a lot of nostalgia. It just feels good. I was spinning several records throughout the day today as I was kind of thinking about doing this video tonight, and it's so hard to describe, but it just felt good. It felt good to handle the records. It felt good to lift the tone arm and put it back down. It felt good to lower the lid once the album was playing and look at it spin. It just all feels so good. It was such a comforting reminder of what the music listening experience used to be like for me. I don't get out albums every week or anything like that, but when I do, it just, the reminder, the nostalgia is so powerful, so strong. It reminds me of a time when, when I was able to slow down a little more often and really immerse in the listening experience. This kind of a player just it demands a more hands-on kind of a experience with the music, doesn't it? If you don't come and turn the thing over after 20 minutes, you don't hear your music anymore, right? Putting it on, turning it, taking it off, cleaning the stylus, dealing with some maintenance. I'm sure it sounds like a pain in the butt to to people who've never had to deal with that sort of thing. But I don't know. It's a neat talisman of a formative chapter in my life as a music fan. So I hope you guys have enjoyed taking a quick peek at it with me today. I should have had this thing spinning the whole time while I was yakking, shouldn't I have? Thanks for being with me today, friends, and I look forward to seeing you all next time, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.